Good evening and welcome to the COVID cast. These are going to be, today's cast is going to be covering days 29 through 36. So I know I have left for an extended period of time, but I was mainly getting busy because our online schooling has restarted. So I made the decision that I'm going to be converting the cast to a weekly format. So we're going to be doing weekly episodes. I'm going to try to have them up somewhere between Friday and Sunday. So today's episode is going to be covering the week of April 12th through the 18th, although I didn't have an episode on the 11th too, so we'll go over that data as well. So in this time, this has been a really, it's kind of nice to do this format because it gives us a lot of data to analyze, a lot of data to analyze. So it's going to help us out quite a bit. Today, just going to go over the main stuff with the virus. Not 100% sure on this weekly format. Next week, since I'm going to have more time to plan, I really just didn't have any time to plan this week. Okay, that's not 100% true. I didn't plan too much this week, so we're going to talk about the virus mainly today. Next week, I'm hoping to maybe have a little bit more to discuss with you, but I think there's a lot to talk about with the virus, so I'm not really concerned about being too short on time here. Anyways, let's go to our Johns Hopkins case tracker here. So as of recording this right now, we have 2,310,572 total confirmed cases of the coronavirus, and this is actually, I'm not going to lie, probably a better number than I would have assumed at this point. So actually somewhat a good thing here. If we go to the case numbers here, we go back to our classic graph, and we go to the logarithmic scale. We can see a trend that we've been wanting to see this whole time. We can see a clear flattening of the log curve. We are no longer in complete exponential growth. All of the flatten the curve measures have started to take effect on this total case number, and the curve has been generally tracking downward. So it's good news. As you can see, here's the daily case chart, which has basically kind of just been flat as of late. So super good news. And the kappa, we haven't ever had a day yet, at least on the Johns Hopkins tracking method, with over 100,000 cases in a day. And so I don't believe this is the reality, and I think that in reality we've been over 100,000 cases a day, and I think that there are certain parts of the world now that are going to be accelerating and that have way more cases than this. So I don't think this is the ultimate peak of the outbreak, but it does show in the countries with lots of testing and lots of measures taken, kind of this is flattened out. So pretty good to see today. So other news, if we go over to the Worldometer site, fantastic site that really provides great data country by country. We see a few things if we go to their country grid here. So one thing I will say about this is that since we've last had the episode, the U.S. has seen both terrible and good developments at the same time. We've seen case numbers, these new case numbers, be limited a fair amount. Daily cases, I'll put this up. The daily new cases in the U.S. have basically been flat since the start of April, hovering at right around 30,000 new cases a day, which is pretty good, although it seems to me like testing has been about flat since then. We've been doing about the same number of tests, so I'm not quite sure what that means. And it's just different states. New York obviously was the big early driver of new case growth, but now New York, they've been in lockdown long enough and under strict enough lockdown that enough people followed that their curve has flattened. So, and if you look at the logarithmic scale for the U.S., I mean, you really do see total cases in the U.S. completely flattening out. It was going at a pretty insane pace until About March 23rd is when I would say you start to see the logarithmic curve start to bend down, which is very notable in my opinion because March 23rd was the bottom of the stock market, coincidentally enough, and that is the moment you start to see this logarithmic curve bend. So something interesting that I've just find a very interesting fact that the logarithmic line was basically straight until the very bottom of the stock market. Then right as the line started to bend, it went back up. Interesting note, but it doesn't really matter because it got so widespread. Even though the new growth has been limited from exponential, we're still sitting at 700,000 confirmed cases, which is, even at the start of this, I was hoping that we would not get there at the start of this, but we just didn't act early enough. If the United States had taken severe lockdown measures at the start of March, we'd be sitting at around, in my estimation, 50,000, I think, right now. Instead, we're at 700,000. So just goes to show you the importance of early action with this thing. We've, messed it up by about 3 weeks, I think. And yeah, but positive news. Now, the whole thing about this is that even though it's positive news, we still just don't know a whole lot about the data. Even still with this, there's some questions as to what the death rates are in the U.S. There's some questions of, certain nursing homes. There have been reports that bodies have not been counted. Just who knows. It seems like there may have been people dying before this started, when COVID just wasn't even one of the options or one of the things they thought to even look for in the deaths. We saw New York adding, I believe it was over 3,000 deaths to its count because there were people that died without even getting a test for COVID. So we've seen the fact that the death toll in the United States is abhorrent, to say the least. It's sitting right now at 38,844. Absolutely terrible. Already, basically just 1 month really into the outbreak, at what the total number of deaths for an entire annual flu season usually is, even at or more than that. At one point, the president was talking about how H1N1 was such a mismanaged pandemic and how that really should be seen as a big flaw of the Obama administration. In fact, not even too long ago, he tweeted about it yesterday, actually talking about what a failure it was. So in that pandemic, which basically H1N1 was just a slightly different strain of the flu that had about the same mortality rate as seasonal flu. It killed 17,000 people, which, just shows how damaging flu is, just having this disease that's slightly, that kills a small amount of the people but infects everyone. Very, very small percentage of the people but infects everyone. You see that as a big effect. It killed 17,000 people. But that was after the entire thing was done, and that lasted over a year, that entire spread of that strain of flu. This, we're nowhere close to being done. We know we're not done yet, and it's already over double the deaths. So don't know what the president was thinking there, trying to claim that, I don't know. Ridiculous statement. Anyways, with such any death toll is way too high, but this is bad. There's no way you can spin this. This is very bad. Testing in the United States, we're up to 1.12% of the population's been tested. 3.7 million tests have been administered. One thing I've been wondering is, I say that 1.1% of the population's been tested, but these are just total tests. How many people are getting repeat tests? I'm not 100% sure. And I don't think that data is easily available. I think, you'd have to collect region by region, county by county on that to know that. I don't think there's a good register of that. So I'm not sure we know actually if 3.7 million individuals have been tested. We just know that's how many tests have been carried out. So that's just an interesting point I would note whenever testing's brought up, is that you need more than one test per person, because before you let them go back into society, you want to test them to make sure they aren't going to go spread the virus afterwards. They still don't have viral loads, even if they can get out of the hospital. So, just with tests, not only do we need enough tests to test everyone in the US, eventually, we need enough tests to test people multiple times in the US. So if I had to guess, when all's said and done, the United States alone is probably going to need 1 billion tests for this virus. I mean, and whether that comes in the form of antibody testing, that is probably the ideal way to go. But we're going to need that. There's no way around that. Anyways, if we go back to the kind of grid of the world countries, I won't show you all of these things. So you'll have to go on the site to see each of these countries, but I will be talking about them. You can see the ones that have the highest case numbers right now. Anyways, what we've been seeing out of all these countries over the past week, the United Kingdom has had a very rough go of things. We knew that their testing was pretty low, and they're still pretty low on testing. And same with France. The UK and France really have been in the same boat of just an immense struggle. France the other day reported just a ridiculous number of deaths. They started to realize they had a huge problem with nursing homes. And I think that's a huge takeaway, that nursing homes are a big, big issue. We've seen in a lot of these nursing homes, like a quarter of the people in these nursing homes die from this. It, you know, it's really a scourge in these nursing homes. They need to be protected in every country. Any place where you have lots of elderly residents, it needs to be completely protected. And we haven't been doing that well. Anyways, big case study. I've talked about Italy so much because they've been under lockdown for so long. So Italy to me is incredibly interesting. I'm gonna post on this great site, Jedi Visual. Coronavirus, la situación in Italia is the name. Basically, it's just Italy's tracking website that has all their data. And it's been really interesting to watch because they've been under lockdown since March 9th as a country. The country's been closed. And obviously today is, April 18th, so well over a month of total lockdown. And just with this chart, we can really see what is going on in Italy. So I'll explain what each of the lines are, the different colors. So the red line there is the number of tests that come back positive in Italy. So at its peak, it was about 7,000. The highest day was March 21st. 6,557 people came back and tested positive. That was the highest number they had in a day. And that's what the red line is. The blue line is the total, the change in the number of people that currently have the virus, the number of active cases. So basically, how the number of active cases, the change in active cases is calculated, is the number of new people tested positive minus the number of people that recover from the virus and the number of people that unfortunately die from the virus. So those are the two numbers there that are combined to get this blue line. The yellow line is dismessi guariti, basically the people that recover from the virus and, recover from the virus. They're fine. They may have some lasting damage, unfortunately, but they've lived through COVID. Hopefully, most of them have had just a mild case, just a bug they pick up, have to deal with it for a few weeks. It sucks, but they live, they're fine. So that is this yellow line. And fortunately, if you look at this chart, you see that the blue and red, it was on a consistent uptrend until about 12 days literally, it's an astonishing break to see. About 12 days after um, the national lockdown was in place, you just see those new numbers get completely lopped off, and you just see this consistent decline. But it's very gradual. Something I pointed out, and I'm going to continue to point out, is that this increase happened in about double, was about twice as fast as this descent is. Okay. The virus explodes when you have nothing, absolutely explodes upwards. It spreads like wildfire. But when you put these restrictions on, it still continues to spread somewhat. So the new numbers go down slowly. They go down slowly, but they do go down. They do go down. Anyways, this black line is the worst line. It's the number of people that die from the virus. We can see that this number peaked on March 27th. So about a week after the peak in new cases occurred, the peak in deaths occurred. And we'd expect deaths because you have to actually have the virus, get to the hospital, get put on a ventilator, and then eventually die. So deaths should be the lagging indicator, the last thing to go down, unfortunately. So we see these deaths, and same with the positive cases. It's just a long descent. So the peak year was 969 deaths in a day. But even still, that was March 27th. Even still here sitting about 3 weeks away from that, it's been about halved to 482. So every single day, pretty much every single day for the last 3 weeks, over 500 people in Italy has been dying from COVID. And before the peak, there is about maybe 2 weeks where over 500 people a day were dying from COVID. So huge numbers, and you just see that the back end, this is just so hard to get down. It takes a long time to get down. And if there's anything I want to leave you with, is just, it's a long ways down on this backside, and it's quick up. It comes quick up. You make a mistake, COVID is going to punish you quickly. And that's something that I think we're not taking into account as a society right now. There's been, Italy has had the fortitude to be on lockdown since March 9th. March 9th, I mean, this is a long time. This is an immense amount of time, right? About 6 weeks now, approaching 6 weeks, I guess. They're in the 6th week. That's a long time. And the U.S. has been closed since about mid in some places to late March. To some places have never closed. Some places, such as South Dakota and Iowa, have never closed, which for the life of me, I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense from any standpoint to me. So I'm just saying this to just say, things stay high for a long time. Deaths stay high for a long time after you've passed the peak. The peak, it seems to me, comes in the first half of the epidemic's course. And there's no reason that this can't go up again. So I know it's disheartening, but it's the truth. And the truth is the only thing that really matters. Anyways, countries that I'm looking at here, Brazil. Oh my gosh, Brazil. Over half their tests are coming back positive. Their deaths are consistently increasing. If we go to Brazil's page here, if we go to their page here, first of all, I guess their total case is logarithmic, somewhat on the downtrend, but it's not bowing that quickly. Total deaths, I guess it's getting pushed down, but it's pretty straight to me. It doesn't look very good to me. Just everything in Brazil seems like a big issue to me. And the number of tests is really just terrifying compared to these other places. Terrifying. 296 tests per million population. Meanwhile, most of these other countries are in not just at 1,000, but thousands. And some of them are at the tens of thousands of people per million tested in their population. Another one is India. I mean, continues so hard logistically, I understand. They tested 335,000 people, which, 335,000 people, that's a lot of people. Well, that's fewer per million than Brazil. So India, huge worry there. Russia has really come up quickly. I mean, very quickly. It seems like they were kind of a little late to maybe the testing game, and now they started to test, and all of a sudden they're up here, reporting nearly 5,000 cases today. So scary stuff. Their deaths are low. I'm guessing a lot of deaths have gone unnoticed in Russia, if I had to guess, or were going unnoticed, and I'm guessing that number is about to soar too. So bad stuff across the world. What do we know? Well, we know, just as takeaways today, we know that what we're doing is working, because if what we were doing had no effect, if things just continued on as normal, the number of deaths would be in probably multi-millions right now, and the number of cases would be, I would guess, in the high tens of millions. I mean, like 50 million cases, 60 million cases. So what we've been doing is working, but we're really losing that patience, and it makes me worried because things are going to accelerate pretty quickly. And it also just makes me worry just how widespread the U.S. case numbers are, because if you extrapolate that Italian data and say maybe we're 2 or 3 weeks behind them, that means we still have so much more time where we're going to be on this back end of this gradual curve. And we see these deaths that just stay up. They just continue to stay up every day. They go down very gradually. Like I said, 3 weeks to have. And we've been sitting here at over 2,000 cases a day. I mean, to me, it seems like the United States is going to have over 1,000 people dying for a month if we remain locked down. So just letting that sink in, I mean, it's going to be bad. The White House was saying maybe we could see, right, their initial estimates were between, I believe, 100 and 260,000 Americans could die, which to me seems fairly reasonable, unfortunately. But then they revised and said, when we saw some success, which we have seen, they said possibly that could be limited to 60, but I think we're almost at 40,000 right now, and I think maybe we've seen the day with the most deaths, but I just don't know. So, I know quarantine's getting hard. I know it's been hard for people, and I hope you're hanging in there. Everything's not bad. Like I said, things could be a lot worse. And they're going to be a lot worse if we don't continue. So I guess what I have to say is keep calm and carry on, right? There's still hope that end of May, maybe we'll see some sort of resolution, right? We're going to continue looking at Italy as kind of our future cast to just see, can they get this down to the point where they can reopen? They're supposed to reopen at the start of May is what they're at right now. We'll see if they have to extend that. But if they can remain closed, I think they can get there. Right, it took them. They're at a little less than half after 3 weeks of hitting their peak. Based on what I'm seeing here, if it takes them another 3 weeks to half that, before mid-May they should be down to, getting close to about 1,000 new people with the virus per day. They'll probably have really good data on where it is. They'll have more and more testing. They'll have a much better picture. So, again, if we assume mid-May Italy can open, we add on 2 weeks, add on 3 weeks, we can assume that by the end of May, early June, the U.S. can begin to open. But if we do it before then, without a plan, we're just going to see the virus spread like wildfire. So, yeah, that's the main thing today. I'll be interested to see what happens. I'm glad to see, this could have been a lot worse. Like, we do need to keep that in mind. This could have been a lot worse. So the fact that we're not seeing that is good. The fact that we didn't see the spread continue at the same rate it was going is good. Because things could have been unfathomably bad. So I know it's sort of sad Saturday, and I'm sorry for being sort of sad today, but I'm happy to be back doing these COVID casts, and I can't wait to talk to you next week. Since I'm leaving a little bit more time for the next episode, I would really like it if you guys could give me a little more feedback and let me know what I should do. Yeah, and if you have any suggestions for the next episode, I have a little more time to plan, so it will be ideal if you leave me some feedback. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. I hope you're having a spectacular Saturday and a wonderful weekend. Have a delightful day.